Greetings, fellow teachers, and welcome to the Music Teacher Mastermind podcast, where teachers come together to discuss challenges, opportunities, problems, and inspiration. I want to say thank you again to everyone that has been listening as I have been starting up my new podcast. Today is episode 10. Woohoo! I'm in double digits now. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate how you've been sharing and spreading the word. And if you are enjoying, it would mean the world to me if you could give me a boost with a 5-star rating on whichever podcast app you are listening with. So today I get to share my own personal challenge, which has been converting my elementary age students to group lessons. And I started this, I've kind of been dabbling in groups for a while now, but I didn't really start the transition until last spring. So spring of 2024, and now we are about to start our new schedule for the school year in fall of 2024. So I hope that you enjoy, and I hope you get some insight and inspiration as I share with you what I've been doing in my studio. So let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Music Teacher Mastermind podcast. My name is Jackie, and today I'm really excited to share with you something that has been quite a challenge in my own studio, and that is converting my elementary age students of 6th grade and under to groups. Actually, scratch that. My older students have been enjoying it, so it's actually become 7th grade students and under are going to group lessons, which if you are thinking, ew, no thanks, I get that because that was me at one time. And this podcast is in no way, shape, or form an attempt to change your thinking or to convince you to be a group piano teacher. We need private teachers, group teachers, we need all the teachers. So what I'm doing today is simply just sharing the process that I took, what I am still working on during the transition. So first of all, I should probably share what kind of a teacher I am. So I have been teaching piano for 26-ish years at this point. I started out with Alfred Basic for a long time because that's what I learned with. I happily transitioned to Piano Adventures, and I think I taught out of that for probably 10 or so years. And then I discovered the Royal Conservatory of Music. So what I would do is I would do Piano Adventures up to 2B, and then I would usually move all my students over to the Celebration series. And now I primarily use Piano Safari. I think I switched my studio to that in 2016. And recently I've been dipping my toes in Music Moves. So we still use a lot of the RCM Celebration series collections, but I am not nearly as rigid with it as I once was. In other words, I feel like I went from being a super stingy, structured teacher, and I've actually been working really hard at allowing rote and improv and more creativity into the studio, which honestly has been very difficult for me. I'm a very type B person for sure, but my lessons are definitely more on the type A side. I just have to make sure that so many boxes are checked, especially before a student leaves my studio. Like if they graduate or whatnot, I just want to be really careful that I did my job and I did my job well. And honestly, I will probably always be that way at least a little bit, no matter how hard I try at being a little bit more flexible, which is fine because it's who I am as a person. It's who I am as a teacher. But please know that as I ventured into this group piano world, I have made things much more difficult on myself than it needed to be. But I like to think it is because I do expect so much out of lessons from my studio, and I never want to lose that standard that I have. So I guess if you guys resonate with that, or if you feel me on that, I get you. Are you with me so far? I think you probably get what I'm talking about. Maybe, hopefully. Anywho, I'm also not super brand new to group lessons. If you listened to the podcast last week in episode 9, I talk about performance classes that I hold for my private lesson students. I have been doing that for about 10 years. I also have been doing buddy lessons and groups for my younger, very starting beginners. I put them together only if they are super brand new, and they would be in the same book. So usually it would either be Piano Safari Friends or Piano Safari Book 1. Then as they progress after year 2 and I kind of see what kind of musicians they're going to be, I would switch them to private lessons. So I've been doing that, I would say ever since the pandemic, I've kind of done that way. And that's fine. However, my students have a minimum of 45-minute lessons when it comes to their private lessons. So, as you can imagine, it really doesn't take that many slots to totally max out my studio time. So, after teaching for so many years, I definitely was getting really bored. I was getting really burned out. I always felt so bad for those last students of the week. Like Thursday night at 7 o'clock, because I don't teach on Fridays, I would be sitting there like, I have to be done with teaching. And that is so not fair to that student, right? So, and then I would get resentful of my time. I'd be like, oh, it's just not fair. It's not fair to the student. It really isn't fair to me. It definitely isn't fair to my family. So I started feeling out how these group piano teachers were making it work because I thought, well, maybe, this can kind of consolidate things a little bit for me. I mean, after all, I am teaching like the same thing over and over and over again to people, right? That's why I did it for my very brand new beginners because I was teaching it so often. So I was trying to see how these other teachers were making it work. And last year, I did decide at some point that I was just going to have to try it. I was just going to have to do it because I'd been thinking about it for so long. And I was getting caught up in the planning process, but I was scared of the implementation process. Okay. But I knew that it was going to help more students. And it is a new challenge for myself, which gets me kind of out of that boredom area. And I was hoping that I would be able to manage my time better so that I could serve everyone a bit better. I don't want to have any more of those Thursday night students that, are not getting the best of me. So here we are. I should also note my studio is pretty healthy in terms of practice, evaluation scores, recital performances, all the things. And that's not me bragging by any means. It's just because I've had those years where that is not great. Just for some reason at this point, it's pretty healthy. Everyone seems content and happy except for me. I'm the problem. So, and I'm speaking from experience. If the teacher is unhappy, that whole facade of a healthy, happy studio, it's just not going to last. Something has to give. So, I'm going to share with you how I started making this transition. Now, it is possible to do a heck of a lot more than I did much more quickly and much more efficiently. I don't know if it's because a part of me was super freaked out that I wouldn't do it correctly or that I would lose students, but I feel like I've been testing this out for a few years with adding more and more performance classes. Again, having the littles in groups, sometimes putting students together for buddy classes. I did that a lot too. So it was kind of like I've been sampling things out. And I think that by all this sampling and putting students together over the years, I don't think they were surprised when I sent out the email last spring. So right now, we're in the middle of August of 2024. I think I sent out the email to them in April. Yeah, it was. It was April of 2024. And I don't think anyone was surprised. I think they kind of saw it coming that I was really starting to move in that direction. So that was good. It wasn't a big shock to them. And so what I did was what Jessica Homewood from Not Your Mother's Piano Studio, she's helped me a lot. And she refers to this as a soft launch. So what I did is I sent out that email that we're going to try group lessons for this summer. Okay. All of my current private lesson students would try out the groups. And then if they wanted to switch back to private lessons in the fall, they would be free to do so. All new students to the studio would automatically be put into groups, and my older students would stay in private lessons. So I really had to put up that boundary and be like, no, if a new student comes, it's in a group or nothing. And if their schedule doesn't work for it, it's not going to happen. So that was my big rule this year. Anyway, so it was pretty well received, surprisingly. I won't lie, I was a little scared. And there was some skepticism from students and parents, but they were all pretty cool about trying it out. And I think it was because they knew that they would have the choice in the fall to go back if they needed to. And I'll talk about the scheduling aspect of this later in the podcast. But first, I'm going to talk about what an actual class looks like. Okay. So I have actually tried out a few things. And to be honest, I did have to check myself after the first few weeks and really adjust my own expectations. Group classes are just a different offering and they're a completely different experience from private lessons. And so my expectations really had to change. And I had to express this to the student and the parents as well and be like, look, it's a different offering. So just be open to that. And that was difficult for me. In a lot of ways, it still is difficult for me, and that's okay. I have to keep reminding myself that although I have all these years of teaching experience, it is private lesson experience that I have. And this is new, right? So I need to allow myself grace as I try new things, which I know is easier said than done, but we all need to do it, right? So this is my setup right now. In my studio, I have an upright piano that has a muffler pedal, and we do use that. And then I have 3 digital pianos with headphones. I also have a table set up where the students can gather at the beginning of class. You do not have to say I have the same setup as me. I'm just trying to share what I ended up deciding on doing. Now, I try to stick with the acronym STEAM, STEAM. Okay, this is a totally forced acronym. The other ones I came up with were not that great. They mean the same thing, but it was like WELSA or PEGSGUGA or WEPSGUGA. I could not come up with it, but STEAM works. It's not perfect, but it gets the point across. I think you can remember it better than WEPSGUGA. But anyway, okay, so what does STEAM stand for? So S is for startups, which is pretty much a warm up. Okay. So in my studio, they come in and they stand up behind their chairs. We do some quick stretches, which are amazing. I highly recommend to do this at the beginning because you get to stretch too, and you get to kind of move your body a little bit. We do like neck rolls and we drop our shoulders, and sometimes we bend over and just hang like from our hips and just, we get those wrists moving. We do some O-ring fingertips. We'll do some solfege too with our bodies, which is kind of fun. If you are familiar with music moves, which Sarah Boyd and Celeste Watson give wonderful tips in, what episode was that? I think it's episode 3 that I did with them about music moves and MLT. They give like all kinds of stuff. So just kind of what it is just getting the students in there and understanding like, here we are. It's time to start class. We're now doing our lesson. Okay, so it just takes a few minutes. We do that. It always feels good. Okay, so S is for startups. T is for together. Okay, I really struggled with groups because I didn't want it to be a whole lab the whole time. I don't want this to be like a factory class, or have like 4 private lessons going on at once. I want us to play together. But I also appreciate that they need to be independent. So what we do is we usually do some ensemble work here. Okay. Now this can be super easy. Nicola Canton in her vibrant music teaching, what's the word that I'm thinking of? Her membership. She has some really great resources, some group resources and some group curriculum, which has really, really easy introductory duets that I just use as ensembles. Like I'll give 2 kids the primo part and the other 2 the other part, and then we swap. We clap the rhythms together. It's great. So it can be super easy. You could do it with pentascales. Let's say you do the C major pentascale. You can do C as a whole note while the other kid is just playing quarter notes. Another kid is playing it in half notes. I mean, it'll be kind of chaotic, but they're learning to keep time together. Or you can make it really complicated. Like maybe you have a big one that you're working on for a performance, and this is the time to work on that. So there's lots of resources out there. Whatever you do, just make sure that you're starting out easier than what you think, especially at the beginning, and allow yourself permission to ditch what is not working so that you can have some experimentation. And again, that grace for yourself as you proceed, especially if this is newer to you as a teacher. Just have fun with it, listen to your students, and go from there. So S is for startups. T is for together. And now E is for explore. This is a time for their lab. This is a time for them to go to their stations for independent time where they can explore a little bit more, but they still have their individual pieces. So let's say they're all at their stations, they have their headphones on, or if one's at the acoustic. They have the muffler pedal on. What I do is I walk around, and often I don't use another pair of headphones. I know a lot of other teachers do, and that's awesome. I just watch their fingers and the music to check their work, and I'll check their technique and that kind of thing. But every now and then I do have everyone stop and listen. So let's say that little Sally, she finished her piece and I would like to hear it, right? I'll have everyone stop what they're doing. And I'm like, hey guys, Sally finished her piece. Let's take a listen. So everybody will stop what they're doing. She'll play it for everyone. They clap. It boosts her confidence. She gets a sticker. It's just good stuff, right? So we don't always do that, but I do that a lot too. Then while they're sitting there during exploration time, not only do I check their assignments from before, but now it's time to explore their next assignment. And I tell them, I'm like, if I haven't gotten to your station yet and you're done practicing, your previous assignment, take a look at what's next and start analyzing it. So labeling starting notes, making sure they know where their hands will be, maybe practice clapping their rhythm, look for dynamics. They have a whole little list where as soon as something gets easy for them, I have them add another element. So I usually have them do that until I can get to them to make sure that they've analyzed it right, they've labeled everything correctly, and that they know what they're going to do at home. So during the exploration lab time, they're also responsible for keeping themselves busy until I get to them. So if they feel like they have reviewed what needed reviewed, practiced what needs practiced, then I encourage them to improvise on their own on a pentascale, or maybe try out their piece with different instrument sounds on the keyboard. Whatever. They're learning how to explore and be independent with their time. And I totally encourage all the creativity possible. All right. The letter A is for activity. This is where we play a game together, or we do a planned activity where some students are getting review. Maybe they've already learned this. Maybe it's brand new for other students. And this is a lot of fun because it kind of gives a place where students don't have to feel maybe a little silly because they don't know something, or maybe they've simply forgotten it and they think that they're the head honcho in the class. It kind of gives that outlet for them. So plus, who doesn't love a good game, right? But sometimes it's not even a game. Sometimes it's just an activity. So we'll either do that at the table, or sometimes we even use the piano as a game board. And I do have on my website, I should share it. It's games that you can actually play at the keyboard. And you can do it in groups, and you use the keyboard as your game board. So it's pretty fun. We like to do that. The last one is M for music wrap up. In my studio, we write our notes for assignments for the week. So they need to make sure they get all their notes written in their notebooks, or sometimes I'll put it on my music staff. That's still something I am exploring myself. So if you have it down to perfect art, let me know. I have watched a lot of people and talked to a lot of people, still figuring out what works great for me. But anyway, so we got to get their notes taken care of. I have sticker sheets in the studio that tracks how many days of practice they get a week. So they get to put their stickers up, and then they got to pack up. Now, this does sound rather efficient, doesn't it? Well, in a perfect world, yes. And sometimes I have classes where they leave and I'm like, wow, this was the best class ever. I am the best teacher ever. Yes. And then I kind of flex for myself and give myself a high five. And then other times they leave and I think, well, maybe I should just sell everything I own and look at the, ads online to work in an office. I don't know. But, it is what it is. Sometimes the classes are going to go great and sometimes they're not. And that's part of the process. And I am accepting that that's probably going to be part of my process for a very long time. And that's okay. So be sure to take notes after class, reflect on what worked, what didn't, and go from there. Maybe what you did worked amazingly in one class and maybe it bombed in the next. Just kind of make note of that. I also like to plan the same activities for each and every class, just tweaking it with the class dynamic and the age groups because it makes my life easier. Another help that I will add is having some kind of a goal or a syllabus even planned out for your class. You don't have to be that specific, but just so you have some kind of idea of what your goals are for each student or even the class as a whole. This way it doesn't make you feel like you were just throwing together random activities, and you will feel like you're actually making more progress. When I realized I needed specific direction, it really helped me a lot. It actually took me a while before I realized this because if you think about it, in private lessons, if you're using a method book, that kind of does all the scope and sequence for you, right? In groups, it really helps to think about this more specifically and maybe even write it out because me personally, I've got people in all kinds of places. I haven't really figured out, quote unquote, my curriculum or if I'm going to have a set curriculum for every class. I really need that kind of direction. Anyway, I hope this gives you an idea of what we're actually doing in class, which maybe you didn't need to know all that. But to be honest, I personally love knowing what other teachers do in their classes because it helps me so much. So that is why I thought I would share that. Okay. So in the past spring, or I'm sorry, during April, back in the spring, 2024, I gave notice of the soft launch. And in summer, I implemented the classes. And over time, I realized I needed to give myself more specific direction with goals and with the STEAM layout. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about scheduling. So, there are always multiple ways you can do scheduling. I have talked to so many teachers about this topic. I actually did a story months ago about scheduling groups, and I did a question. And, sometimes I'll ask a question in Instagram and I'll get like 3 answers. Sometimes I get a lot of answers. This question, I got messages out the wazoo. I was like, wow, people actually watch the stories. And I was really impressed. And I have to tell you guys, y'all do it different than everyone. It was almost overwhelming. I was like, whoa, it's a lot of stuff. So I am going to share with you 2 different ways that I have actually done in scheduling for groups, which have been effective for me. But if you find something completely different that works for you, just like those Instagram messages, holy moly, there's a lot of different ways. So whatever works for you, that's great. But this is what I did. So for summer, this is what I do anyway for private lessons. I just happen to add groups to the mix. So I do it a little differently. I look at the amount of lessons I have to teach for the entire summer. So I take a look at all my students. How many lessons total am I doing? And then I look at the weeks and I think, okay, when do I not want to teach? I don't teach the week of 4th of July. I always take off 2 weeks in August, that kind of thing. So I block off all the weeks that I am not going to teach. And then I use my music staff software. And I go ahead and I just put open lesson slots for the entire summer of when I am willing to teach, and everyone just registers themselves. So if it's a private lesson, there's only 1 spot available. If it is a group lesson, there are 4 spots available, so on and so forth. So it is first come, first serve, but they're given the freedom to cancel the lessons themselves. And they can put themselves into an opening whenever and wherever they want. They don't even have to give me notice. And there's some weeks where I teach the same kid like every single day. And they just get all their lessons over with for the whole summer within 2 weeks. And that's cool. They can do that. Some do it weekly. Some do it, twice a week for 4 weeks. It's whatever they want to do. I require that they take 8 lessons for the summer. So it's really kind of nice because I don't ever have to schedule anybody. They just take care of it. It does get a little hard for lesson planning, so you have to make sure that you keep room for that, but it usually works out. So I put in the necessary amount of private lessons and group lessons, but then I make sure that there's more slots available than what I will actually be teaching to provide some flexibility. I always have plenty of breaks, and this way I'm only teaching when I actually want to be teaching, and it does work good for me. Now, I do know teachers who do this with their group lessons during the school year as well. They take the most common teaching hours for their areas, which will say maybe from 4:30 to 7:30, and they will put it in group slots at each hour. So one at 4:30, one at 5:30, and one at 6:30 as an example. If each class is a class of 4 students, this offers 12 possible slots in just one afternoon. So suddenly you'd be done scheduling on your end. Isn't that amazing? I think that's so great. Now, I may do that for summer, but I don't do it for the school year. I like to be the one to say who is in what group because I like to match the kids up by personality and age. I feel like in the summer, that is just so much more difficult to do. But in the school year, I can have a little bit more control. So I like to say who is in what group because I like to match my kids up by personality and age. So I have a group for 4 to 5 year olds, 5 to 6 year olds, 7 to 8 year olds, and 9 to 12 year olds. It does make things a little bit more time consuming on my end, and it does create, that classic ultimate music teacher puzzle. But it's a weird system that I actually enjoy doing it. I know I'm like one of the weird ones who looks forward to doing the schedule. It's like my challenge puzzle, and I always feel amazing when it's done. So I don't mind it. And as I approach the upcoming school year, I wrote out what would be my ideal schedule first. So I just looked at the week and I'm like, you know what? I want Mondays to be an admin day. I want it to be a really light day. I'm only going to teach from 4:30 to 7:15. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. And, so I looked at every day and I'm like, this is my ideal schedule. I then sent out a Jot form to current students. Jot form is very similar to Google form if you've never used it. And I looked at their availability and if it fit into my ideal schedule and who they could work best with and if their schedules fit. So from there, I had a few tweaks. I did have to text back and forth with some families, which is pretty typical, and that's fine. And bada bing, bada boom, my schedule was created. As new students have been registering, I have been adding them to different classes that I think will be a good fit. So I actually have space, you guys, to add in more group classes. I couldn't believe it, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to until I have all the other possible ones filled. And then I might. And if not, I don't know, I might take my dog for a walk. How cool is that? So my schedule this year compared to last year is a breath of fresh air. I cannot even tell you how much better it is. It does involve a heck of a lot more planning. So I did make time for that, but I was able to very easily because of all the time I have saved by combining students. And I'm going to add one last thing. I have noticed that I really cannot schedule a ton of private lessons back to back because group lessons go by so quickly and they're so involved that if I do too many private lessons now, I'm finding myself getting bored, which has never happened to me before, ever, because I love teaching piano. I love it, love it, love it. But like I said before, I want my students to have the best of me. So I have definitely learned that I've got to kind of mix it up. Back to my soft launch. So how did it go? Do you want to know how many students wanted to move back into private lessons? Well, here's the thing. So I sent it out. I had 25 students move to groups. It's not my whole studio, but I had 25 students move to groups. Out of all 25, only one is going back to private lessons this fall. Now, I do have 2 sets of siblings that are actually together in the same class. So it's 4 kids, a brother and sister in each family. They're not so sure. They're a little skeptical. And I'm not going to lie, their class has kind of given me a run for my money. So we all agreed collectively, the students and the moms, that we're going to give it until Christmas and time will tell. So worst case scenario, it'll be 5 if they decide not to. But I do like a challenge. And that is a challenge. So I'll have to update you guys on that one. And I will say this, I didn't have any students quit. Now, I did give them the choice, had I said, this is what we're doing, which some teachers have done, and kudos to them, man, they might lose a few students. And I think if you just expect that, then that's fine because you know that eventually you're going to fill that spot with group students that you want. So it really just depends on what you're looking for. And my outcome does not mean it's going to happen every time. Some students simply need the one-on-one attention in private lessons, and that's totally fine. I actually did refer a new student. I had a new student start at the beginning of summer, and I did have her try out a few group classes, and it just was clear that it was just not going to work for her. She needs that one-on-one attention, which I don't have the room. So I did refer her to another teacher. And I wish that I could have kept her, but I was definitely doing what I knew was best for her and for the studio. And that's okay. We're not going to have the perfect setup for everyone. There's so many great teachers out there. So, and that is a nutshell for all of you of how I have been converting my studio to group lessons. Some resources that have helped me along the way, which I will share in the show notes. Christopher Fisher has a great book called Teaching Piano in Groups. I have that one all highlighted and doggy-eared like crazy. Did participate in the online conference over the summer of Group Illuminated. Oh, it was so good. I definitely recommend that next year if you can, or I don't know if you can access it now. But if you can, and you have the means to do it, that is really, really jam-packed full of great information. Jessica Homewood from Not Your Mother's Piano Studio, she's actually going to be on the podcast next week, and she has got oodles of free resources. She actually has her own course that she'll be relaunching, I think, in January. Of course, I listen to all the podcasts, and I love just talking and sharing with other teachers locally as well as on social media. Don't be shy. If you have a question for somebody out there, just message them. What's the worst they're going to do? Just not answer you. Just ask them. Some ready to go curriculum that's handy with lesson plans. Dorla from Piano Pyramid has got some really great stuff. If you're not wanting to just invest in that right away, Melanie Bowes from Keynotes Music, she has a monthly membership that's really, really handy. I actually did that for a while too. So just explore what's out there. There's so much out there, and you can really have a successful studio with students that are successful in groups. And I want to know if you have a challenge, an opportunity, problem, or inspiration in regards to group lessons or anything else, because that's your copy, guys. We all got them. And so I want to know what your copy is. You can email me at Jaclyn at PianoCats. That is Jaclyn at pianocats.com. And I just really appreciate you. I appreciate you listening. And I just hope that you have a wonderful week until we talk again. Thanks, guys. All right. Thank you so much, teachers, for listening. I really appreciate you all. And I have to say that this whole adventure that I've been on is really because of so many other teachers like yourself who give so much back to the teacher community. So I appreciate you guys. And I appreciate you listening. So I wanted to throw out that I do still have some openings left for some teacher consultations that will be starting up in September. And I also have some room in the new music teacher mastermind that will be opening up as well. This mastermind really is just for teachers who are wanting to level up their studio, and that can be in so many different ways. Maybe you want to convert to group lessons, or maybe you just want to get a little bit more clear in your vision for your studio business. I mean, there's so much to talk about, but this is going to be a studio-focused mastermind. So if you're interested in connecting with some other teachers and really getting your tribe of teachers together, let me know. And I would love to talk to you. We can have coffee and a Zoom and just see if maybe this would be something that would work best for you. In the meantime, teachers, I appreciate you guys. Make sure that you keep on teaching, you keep practicing, and you keep loving. Take care.